Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Samirul Farid bin Azmi, and my metric number is DIL 203003. For today, me and my group members will explain about equity in Islamic law. This is our table of content. For introduction, I will explain about it. For definition, Shamirul will explain about it, and types, Anissa Usna will explain about it. Example of case law, Shamirul Daniel. Conclusion, me myself. And lastly, reference, Anissa Usna. For introduction, only Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala sets the law, or the absolute judge who sets the complete rules and laws for human beings. The determination of Islamic law aims to enable human beings to live a harmonious life and govern this earth by gaining the pleasure of Allah and gaining happiness in this world and the hereafter. The rules of law that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has determined for human beings are complete, that is, by covering the aspect of morality, worship, muamalat, politics, and social. This is because Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala created human beings and knows what is needed and suitable for human beings. In that case, all religious rules and laws that come from God are called Islamic law. The source of Islamic jurisprudence that are the place for the adoption of Islamic law can basically be divided into two parts, namely the agreed source and the non-agreed source. Sources that are agreed upon or agreed upon by all scholars without any dispute are Al-Quran, Al-Sunnah, Al-Ijma, and Al-Qiyas, while the sources that are not agreed or that are in dispute among the scholars are Al-Ihtisan, Masali, Al-Mursalah, Al-Istishab, and so on. Istihsan may offer a means of avoiding hardship and a solution which is harmonious with the higher objective of the Sharia. Istihsan is considered as being the counterpart of equity in common law. The juristic views of the Hanafi, Maliki, and Hanbali jurists have validated istihsan as a subsidiary source of law. Additionally, this written assignment will explain about one of the sources that are not agreed upon by scholars, which is Al-Istihsan. Al-Istihsan is a source that is not agreed upon by scholars, and as a side source of Islamic jurisprudence, it contributes a lot to Muslims, especially in the field of buying and selling. Lastly, Islamic jurists define istihsan as leaving a designated law to a new law in an event with the account of Islamic primary source current relevance. Today, the method of istihsan is used to solve many current social issues. Next present.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Shamirul Daniel and my metric number is DIL 203009. So now I am going to present the definition part. So first, equity in Islamic law is a secondary source of the Sharia, have also been used by the jurists to achieve equity in Islam. Istihsan in Islamic law is inspired by the principle of fairness and conscience, and both authorize departure from a rule of positive law when its enforcement leads to unfair result. Istihsan is founded on the idea of equity and conscience in Islamic law. The word istihsan comes from the Arabic language, which means judicial discretion. They describe it as a way of expressing one's own opinion in order to avoid the rigidity and injustice that may follow from enforcing the law as written. Istihsan is an Arabic term for juristic discretion. In its literal sense, it means to consider something good. Muslim scholars may use it to express their preference for particular judgment in Islamic law over other possibilities. It is one of the principal legal thought underlying scholarly interpretation or ijtihad. Hanafi makes a judgment in a particular case that is different from that on which comparable case have been resolved for a reason stronger than that which is acquired in those instances. The abandoning of one legal standard for another that is regarded preferable on the basis of the Quran, Sunnah, and consensus. Maliki defines the istisan to abandon exceptionally what is required by the law, because applying the existing law would lead to a departure from some of its own objective. Istisan is a branch of ijtihad. Prophet Muhammad said whatever real Muslim desire is preferable in God's view. The difference between them is as the Sharia is an embodiment of the will of God, unlike equity, which is defined as a law of nature superior to all other law, written or otherwise. This is not what is meant by istisan, for istisan does not recognize the superiority of any other law over the divine revelation.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Naanis Hosna bint Ahmad Tajuddin. My metric number is TIL 203006. So I will explain regarding my parts, which is types of istisan and criticism by scholars or ulama. Okay, for the first type of istisan is the istisan based on the consensus, which is called as ijma. Ijma has always referred to the consensus reached in the past, near or remote, and never to contemporaneous agreement. For example, ijma among them is the obligation of akad istisna, which is an agreement of order from the buyer and the seller to bear the full capital, where the general method of Sharia prohibits the sale and purchase of goods that do not yet exist, but the ijma ulama stipulates such as sale and purchase required based on istihsan. For the second type of istihsan is on the basis of what is good, which is called as al-uf. Istihsan based on oath occurs on problems that are the practice and habit of society, and it is contrary to general method. For example, the legislation mandates that a specific cost be paid for the use of a public restroom without imposing any restrictions on the amount of water that may be used or the length of time that the bathroom can be used. The dalil qiyas is that an akad must occur on known and defined things, but the dalil istihsan necessitates it since human uruf has accepted with an akad throughout history. Okay, next is istihsan on the basis of necessity, which is called as darura. Okay, moving from the original law that has been set on a problem because there is an emergency that requires him to move from the original law. Okay, for example of this istihsan, scholars state that one's fast is not void if one swallows something that is very difficult to avoid, such as swallowing dust and smoke. Okay, if the if that person swallow that dust and smoke, his fasting still valid and not void. And then is descend on the basis of benefit, which is called as maslahah. The meaning of al-istihsan with maslahah is to move from one law to another problem that has become a general method to another law because of a particular maslahah. For example, zakat should not be given to Bani Hashim because in the past the group received gift from the spoils of war. When there is no more war, they become incapable and must be helped and given zakat. The meaning here is that in principle, it is not permissible to give anything or anything related to zakat to this group, but instead Abu Hanifa was required to give zakat to them in his time based on al-istihsan. This means any matter if seen as al-istihsan based on maslahat is to protect their interests and the welfare of human property from being ignored. Next is istihsan on the basis of analogy, which is called as al-qiyas or al-kafi, which is al-qiyas al-kafi means less clear, while qiyas jali is qiyas that is more clear. When qiyas kafi is confronted with qiyas jali, this qiyas kafi is considered stronger than qiyas jali when it has a stronger effect and is more authentic in principle. For example, the residual drink drunk by wild birds such as herons or eagles. According to qiyas jali, the rest of the water is najis because it is categorized the same as the leftovers of drinking land wild animals, for the same reason that both types of animals are najis meat. The leftover drink is calculated based on the meat from which the animal's saliva was born. So all animals whose meat is unclean and also unclean. Okay, and lastly is istihsan through the text, which is nas. Things on istihsan with nas means things on every problem that show laws that are contrary and different from the prescribed method that has nas from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. For example, such as the by al-salam duty, which is sell and purchase in cash, but delivery of goods for sale is delayed. According to the Prophet ﷺ's statement, selling items that do not belong to the vendor is prohibited by Islamic law. However, by as-salam is excluded through the method of istihsan. Okay, for criticism by scholars or ulama, not all the schools of Islamic law agree on utilizing this principle. The Hanafis, Malikis, and Hanbalis validate istihsan as a subsidiary source of law, whereas the Shafi'is, Zahiris reject and refuse to give it any credibility on their formulation of the legal theory of usul fiqh. Al-Shafi'i viewed the practice of juristic preference as a heretical usurping God's sole right as the legislator of Islamic law. Okay, for Saraksi points out that some jurists have criticized istihsan on the grounds that the analogy is being given up for personal opinion, something prohibited in Islam. He refused this understanding as incomprehensible, as no jurist would give up an authority for something that lacked evidence. I think that's all from my part. Thank you.
Case law Zarina binti Hashim versus Jamaluddin bin Said in 2007. The plaintiff petitioned the court for RM 12,000 ringgit Malaysia in child support from the defendant. The plaintiff had previously secured an interim order for custody of the child, as well as a monthly support order of RM 300 ringgit. The defendant, on the other hand, had disobeyed the order and made the plaintiff responsible for all of the children, which should have been the defendant's responsibility. The amount of RM 12,000 ringgit in overdue maintenance was deemed a debt owed by the defendant, to the plaintiff after the court was satisfied with the plaintiff's argument and documentation. Using Section 121, Subsection 1, Subsection B of the Penang Sharia Court Civil Procedure Enactment, which provide maintenance is only regarded as a debt that may be claimed once court order is issued. The court opted to go on with the trial in addition to this provision of the law. The court held that if the summons was properly served on the defendant and the defendant refused to appear or to address the claims, the defendant had confessed to the charge made against him. This is founded on the Islamic jurisprudential principle that silence in a subject in which one must speak is a confession. The second case of case Ibrahim bin Haji Ishaq and other versus Anwar bin Ahmad and two others 2005. The court rejected the application by plaintiff to visit their daughter and granddaughter. Plaintiff's daughter is the defendant's wife and the granddaughter in question are the defendant's children under his custody. The court, based on two police reports submitted and evidence from the witness, found that the first plaintiff had attacked the defendant at his workplace and his house was thrown with stones, wood and steel. In justifying the decision, the court was of the view that the plaintiff's application to see and take his daughter and grandchildren back home in a tense mood should not be allowed. There is no intimacy between the plaintiff and the defendant, and even more, the plaintiff wished to take the revenge against the defendant. On the basis, the court decided to reject the application submitted by the plaintiff. The court is of the view that the decision is to avoid quarrels and hostile that will divide this family. The court considered that the defendant is entitled to defend his right not to obey the plaintiff to ensure that the good family relationship will be returned to the normal. This decision is issued as asserted by the court based on maslahah for the benefit of defendant in preserving his family and refraining greater harms if the conflict continues. Thank you.
For the conclusion, when the meaning given by the scholars in the Hanafi school and the Maliki school is studied and examined, the use of al-istisan, according to their opinion, is not based on reason and laws alone. Therefore, the use of al-istisan, according to them, is based on Islamic argument as well. When examined, the meaning of al-istisan, according to Imam Shafi'i, is different from the meaning given by scholars in the Hanafi school and Maliki school. Namely, Imam Shafi'i describes the use of al-istisan based on reason alone without Islamic evidence. That is why he rejects argue with him. From this, it can be concluded here that the disagreement that occurs between the sect on the argumentation of al-istisan is a disagreement in terms of wording only. It happened because they did not give the same meaning. In fact, there is no dispute between them because their goal is one, which is to bring good to society, religion, and bring the truth as well as be careful or throughout in issuing a law. That's all from me. Thank you very much.